Preparing to live stream the meeting. This is so exciting.
This is so exciting. This is a really exciting day. It's like birthing a baby, isn't it? You've been working on a project, Heather Shafter, about an extraordinary woman named Libby Frank. And today is the launch of that work. And I'm pleased to be the one to talk with you this morning on the day of this launch and hear from you some things about Libby Frank, your relationship with her, and the process of bringing this book to life for us. So tell us, Heather Shafter,
Well,
what we're doing here.
Before I answer any questions, I just want to introduce you to everyone that's watching. So this is Jan Morris, and Jan was a supporter of the Life of Libby book before it was published to help bring it to life. And Jan's also my aunt, so and someone who asks the best questions that I know, or I didn't really say that the way I meant, but someone who asks really great questions. So I'm so happy that you agreed to join me and ask me your questions about the book and talk some more about Libby. So yeah, what are you thinking?
That's wonderful. So off we go. First of all, tell us about the life of Libby. Who was she? And what do you know about her passion and her mission in life and her accomplishments?
Yeah, so Libby Frank was a lifelong peace and justice activist. She started her peace and justice work in the 1940s and continued on with it into the 2020s. She was married to Mort Frank for 60 years, and he was really a partner, not just in life, but also in peace and justice work. And a lot of people who knew Libby also knew Mort Frank. And she was an inspiration to so many people who knew her because of all of the things she had done. She worked in the 1950s in particular on anti-segregation and desegregating public swimming pools. She supported factory and farm workers' rights back before, there was no real OSHA or like rights for, safety. So she supported that. And she also did a lot of work towards ending the war in Vietnam. She hosted Jane Fonda at her at the Bergen County Peace Center in New Jersey to speak about ending the war in Vietnam. And then she spent many decades of her life focused on peace and justice in the Middle East.
So she was in many places with many people, right at the heart of the fights to become a more just and peaceful nation, make a more peaceful and just world.
Yes, absolutely.
And in the 40s, when was she born? How early was she beginning
So she
this?
was born in 1927, December of 1927.
So she was late teens, early 20s when she was working already for these causes.
Yeah. Yeah, she was very interested in global affairs. And I think part of it was because when she was in high school, guys were getting drafted to the war, to World War II. And there were students of hers that didn't attend their own high school graduation because they were drafted. And that really impacted the students of that time. Their whole high school graduation was about like, how do we bring peace to the world?
So she was very personally affected.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to fast forward for a moment and ask you how you met her. How did you come to know Libby?
Yeah, so I actually did an internship for the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom when I was in college. I did one in the US, and I did a study abroad in Paris, and I interned for them in Paris as well. And when I graduated from college, I came back to Philadelphia and I decided to get involved with the local chapter. And that's where I ended up meeting Libby at local chapter events right around 2002, 2003.
And what drew you to her? How did you connect with her at that point?
Yeah. Libby was just a natural mentor.
Mm.
She gravitated towards me and she asked me, I mean, it's so consistent because one of the first things she asked me was, what are you passionate about? Because that's where she believed people should spend their time
Start.
and energy. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, so we met, we talked. She recruited me to the chapter's Middle East committee. Because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to work on. And she's like, well, if you're not sure, come work with me. And so
Oh.
we worked together on educating ourselves and other people about the complexity of what goes on in the Middle East, because a lot of times, if we let ourselves be educated, just by mainstream media, it can be very black and white. And depending on,
Mhm.
what you're watching, it's either black or white, right?
Right.
So
Right.
so that's what we focused on, educating ourselves and others about issues.
So I can't help thinking that you were in about the same period of your life
Yeah.
that she was when she caught fire with some of these ideas. So I could imagine she was trying to help you get into this work without having to reinvent the wheel. She could bring the benefits of her experience to bear on her relationship with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, you had to think to yourself, I need to write a book about this woman. How did that happen?
Libby just had so many stories.
Mm.
And, at that time, maybe I was 25 and she was 75, let's say. Um, when I thought about people of that age, I thought, well, they tend to tell the same stories over and over. And, Libby never told the same story twice. Like, I could not believe how many examples she had. And it was like always related to like peace and justice work. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, we need to write these down because they're so cool. And also, like, how did this come to be? Like, how did Libby become the person who did all of these things? Like, what led her to this? How did she know what to do? And
Mhm.
part of it, I've heard a few like authors say in the past, when I've like listened to podcasts and things like that, authors say like, I wrote this book because I needed this book.
Mhm.
And I feel
Mhm.
like that's me too. Like, I needed the book.
Mhm.
Like, I needed to
Mhm.
like figure out like, how do I know what to do and what my path is? So
Mhm.
yeah, it was pretty amazing journey.
Well, storytelling is a really powerful way of delivering um, inspiration and message and guidance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there a favorite story you have that we're going to read about in the book?
I think my favorite story is from a trip that Libby took in 1951. She um she was traveling to East Berlin for a World Youth Conference in 1951. And it was in the height of the Red Scare. A lot of progressive people were having their passports taken away, or if they applied for a passport, they weren't getting them if they were known to participate in certain organizations or do certain activities. And Libby did those things. So she didn't have her passport. She was really nervous she wasn't going to be able to get it. And she did. She successfully got her passport, and they took a boat to France. They couldn't go direct to East Germany because of the Iron Curtain. And so she took a boat to France, and she found other people on board that were also going to the festival, and they were traveling
Mhm.
together from, they didn't know ahead of time. They kept everything secret. And they
Mhm.
traveled together from France to like this other place in France, and then they took a train. And they arrived at the port in France where they were going to take the final boat to like get to Germany, to East Germany. And someone from the US group like took a flag out of his jacket lining or something, and he was like waving this flag this American flag, and people from the UK and all other countries, they were like on the trains nearby, and they were cheering for this US group
Wow.
because they heard that the State Department was like cracking down on people in the US, and they weren't sure if anybody was going to make it from the US. So she said it was just such an amazing feeling to like be cheered because like in the US she was, harassed for her activities.
I
And
wondered about that. Yeah.
she just had this incredible like few days with people from all around the world that were basically focused on talking about like how do we bridge the differences between our countries and how do we build a world of peace based on justice. And of course there was lots of singing and dancing, and it's just a wonderful story.
That's a thrilling story, and that's part of the guts you're referring to in the book title. That's a very gutsy thing to go and do that and be in the presence of people who are breaking through oppression, suppression, and oppression to find their group.
Yeah, yeah.
That's wonderful. I was wondering about that when you were talking about how it sounds like she had a gift for rallying people around her, or at least gathering strength from supporters. Was that your experience of her? I mean, you can't do this alone. You have to be able to impact people and get them on board.
Yes, I think for Libby, she was absolutely an organizer. And she was a leader. I mean, she became the executive director of the US section of WILF in 1981. And prior to that, she led a delegation to visit a number of countries in the Middle East to meet with leaders of organizations there. So she was absolutely a leader and an organizer. And she really believed that it takes a village. And she also believed that people needed to be involved in the organizing and the policy making. Like, she or anybody else couldn't be the one that made all the decisions and then said, hey, come along and do this with me. It's like we have to do it together if we want people to be engaged and involved.
Absolutely. You can't just be the leader of a bunch of passive soldiers. You have to have everybody feel
Yes.
like they have a part in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us more about the process of writing this book. You had wonderful stories and an experience of her that lasted a long time, 20 years?
Yeah.
20 years. And you had to find a way to impart the stories and stitch this together in a way that was meaningful and impactful and reflected your love and respect for her. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's funny. When I first started, I thought it was going to be more like a biography or, a narrative, me telling a story about Libby. And I started just interviewing her, and I wish I had recorded those calls, but I instead transcribed them as we were talking. And so we spent maybe a year just like me writing down everything that she could remember about her life, everything, not just peace and justice work. And then I started trying to like write this book, and I started putting it in third person, and I didn't like it. I was like, I really want this book to have Libby's voice and character in it. Like, I don't want it to be my voice. So
About her.
yeah, like everything. So it's written in first person,
Oh, wow.
even though we co-wrote it basically, and we wrote it in Libby's voice. And obviously there was a lot of organizing of information, a lot of rewriting and editing and getting feedback from people and doing more editing. And I just have, after this process, I have so much more respect for people that have written books. Like, I've read so many books, and I just thought, oh, this person wrote this book. But it's like they wrote it, they organized it, they edited, somebody else read it, somebody else edited, and then the publication process. I mean, it's really, I think anybody that publishes a book, it's like a labor of love.
And the first person really, I imagine, puts the reader inside of her rather than looking at her. If you're reading something in the first person, you begin to be that person as well, don't you? Is that kind of the impact you're hoping to have to, or did you have a different thing in mind?
I definitely wanted the readers to find themselves in the story.
Mhm.
I also wanted the reader to be in my shoes. Like I was the recipient of these stories,
Hmm.
and I was inspired by these. And you know, part of the reason I wanted to share them is I thought, well, if I find this inspiring and interesting and intriguing, you know, I want to share that with others. And even like Libby's mentorship, I want to share that with others. And so that's really um, you know, at a high level, what I hope readers get out of the book.
That they're going to feel the same kind of connection to a mentor, even if she's coming across on the page, on the written page, that you felt. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, that's wonderful. Is there anything you're thinking about related to Libby and your work with her and your relationship with her that I haven't thought to ask you just yet, that you would really want your followers here to know?
You know, there's a theme in the book, and it almost became the book's title, which is when we work for peace and justice, there are going to be folks that try to shut us down.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes it's people that we might expect to be our allies because they're trying to protect us. And sometimes it might be people who don't want to hear what we're saying because it threatens their position in power.
Mhm. Mhm.
So on the back cover of the book, there's a quote from Libby. Well, I want to show it to you.
Oh,
So
do
this is
definitely.
the book.
Oh, it's a beautiful cover.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And on the back cover, there's a quote from Libby, and it says, "In speaking out, you can find allies. By not speaking up, you've lost already." And it's just
Mm.
this real encouragement to say, you know, it is hard to speak up sometimes, but you have to, because that's the only way that we can find our allies.
Mhm. There's so many rewards in taking risks, I think is
Mhm,
what she's teaching us there.
mhm. Yeah.
So I know that you're hoping that people who are viewing this live stream today will run to Amazon, right? Amazon is the place to run with your finger and click and buy this book and have this kind of experience you're hoping for, and to tell more people, because it's in the reading of this book that another community is built to continue the work.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, the thing about today, the reason why we have a launch day is because when a lot of people come together and decide to get this book on this day, it actually increases the book's visibility to people who might not otherwise ever see it or ever know about Libby Frank and what she did.
Wonderful. Well, thank you on behalf of all your readers to be. Thank you for this labor of love and everything that went into it. And I hope it's a smashing success and keeps the life of Libby living on.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And thanks for joining me this morning. It was such a pleasure talking to you. So I really appreciate it.
My pleasure too. Okay, we'll be following.
Okay.